Do you call yourself a radical?
Yeah, you know, if that's what radical means, call me a radical.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you are a radical. A radical idiot.
Well, that's one way to start a video, I guess. Jumping to your conclusion before you even make your first argument. Today, as I promised in my last video, we're going to take a look at a pile of garbage produced by none other than Hunter Avallone.
Most of you have probably heard of Cortez, but for those of you who haven't, you're in for a real treat. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is a 29-year-old politician, activist, community organizer, and outspoken socialist. She recently won a congressional seat in New York in one of the biggest upsets during the 2018 midterms.
And the reason she won is because people are sick of stale establishment candidates. As much as I hate to admit it, part of the appeal of your orange dictator-in-chief is that he was outside of the Beltway loop. People are tired of politicians who make empty, vaguely worded promises and get nothing done. That's why the DNC screwing Bernie out of the nomination so that Hillary, the milquetoast centrist Clinton, could get the nomination under the mistaken idea that they could win over some Republican voters, instead alienated the progressive base. AOC won because she's a non-establishment candidate who scares the shit out of the establishment, and unlike Trump, she does it by doing good things. In just 1 month, she's managed to shake things up in a way that centrist Trump voters hoped the game show host would. Remember the whole blue wave versus red tsunami thing? Turned out the red tsunami was just algae in the blue wave. And in the big picture, we're seeing a larger pattern of new politicians replacing the stale ones.
She graduated from Boston University in 2011 with a bachelor's degree in international relations and a minor in economics. And trust me, she must have really minored in economics based on her seemingly clueless understanding of economics.
I think I trust someone who has an education in economics, even if it is just a minor, more than I trust someone who gets their economics information from Fox News and random armchair economists who think trickle-down economics actually works.
The DNC's Tom Perez claimed Cortez represents the future of the Democratic Party, and CNN called her a new face for the Democratic Party. I can't believe I'm saying this on camera, but I actually agree with CNN. I've always thought the face of the Democratic Party should look just as crazy as their agenda.
Crazy ideas like making sure everyone has free healthcare, helping people get through a tough time so they can survive long enough to find work again, a livable wage, a woman's right to choose, making the wealthy pay their fair share which may prevent them from buying a 75th summer home, making sure the planet is still healthy for our grandchildren, and so on. These aren't even radical ideas. In most of the civilized world, these are normal centrist ideas. Hell, in Great Britain, even some conservatives support ideas that are considered radical socialist in America.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez represents everything wrong with the current state of the left. First of all, Cortez, along with the Democrats, have grown far too comfy with socialism. It reveals how much the Democrats want to tax the rich, and Cortez's insane ideas of how the government should be providing for us like we're all baby birds in a nest just reveals how entitled these leftist fools have become.
I know, he thinks socialism is when the government does stuff, and the more stuff it does, the more socialist it is, right? She wants the government to actually benefit the people, not plug us into a weird matrix of dependence like many conservatives seem to think. Personally, I'd prefer a world with no government, no states, an anarchist communist society. But I know that's a ways off. I'm a realist who knows that you need a gentle nudge from center-left types like Bernie and AOC right now so as to not scare people. In 100 years, her ideas will be judged as fair for its day. You need fair for its day types like her just as much as ahead of their time radicals.
How in the world can healthcare be a human right? The only way for healthcare to be granted to everyone is through the government. But the government does not give us our rights, it protects our rights.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
By providing universal health care, it is protecting our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's such a dumb argument. The government makes murder illegal. Should we get rid of everything the government does that requires enforcement? You probably think the idea of antitrust laws is bad too. You likely think Standard Oil and Carnegie Steel should have never been broken up, right?
According to U.S. National Library of Medicine, healthcare is not a human right for a couple different reasons. First of all, healthcare is difficult to define. Maybe a quick visit to the doctor is healthcare, but is an organ transplant, cosmetic surgery, or the most expensive medicines or surgeries also considered a human right? Secondly, a right possessed by an individual implies a duty on the part of others. Are your human rights now suggesting you have a right to a doctor's service or time? To propose that healthcare be considered a human right, it is not only wrong-headed, it is unhelpful. Mature debate on the rationing and sharing of limited resources can hardly take place when citizens start from the premise that healthcare is their right, like a fair trial or the right to vote. Ironically enough, entitlement rarely gets you anything.
Hunter here believes that doctors should be allowed to charge an arm and a leg for every medical procedure under the sun. Have you seen some of the things on hospital bills? Often things not asked for. Taking care of patients is part of the job description. Doctors wouldn't go broke under universal health care. I'm astonished as to why this is so radical for many Americans. Even fucking Sargon supports universal health care. Even Sargon, the idiot who believed the Heather Heyer heart attack myth of the alt-right and yucked it up over the skeptic feminist murder, has enough common sense to support universal health care.
If you tell an employer that you graduated high school, it literally means nothing, because high school is available to everyone. By making a college degree so accessible to the point that everyone has a degree, you actually deduct from the value of college, thus making this college for all notion near useless.
That's already happened under capitalism. A high school degree in 1960 could get you a well-paying job. Now, many employers are demanding 4-year degrees and 5 years work experience just for a secretary's job or a groundkeeper's job. Since the inflation's already happened, shouldn't we at least let people have as much debt as they had coming out of high school 6 decades ago?
Cortez's open support for socialism actually reveals how much of a fraud she is. If we look at a classic example of a socialist country, Venezuela, they have a homeless ratio of 6.68%. That's 2 million homeless people out of a population of 31.98 million.
Bingo! I got right-winger bullshit bingo. It's not a right-wing video if you don't scaremonger about Venezuela. The problem with Venezuela isn't socialism. It's corruption and dictatorship, which can happen under any system. This happens a lot under capitalism.
If you didn't know, you're an idiot. If you did know, you're my enemy.
Since you idiots like to scaremonger about European socialism and Venezuela, why isn't most of Europe having the same problems as Venezuela? Sorry, but you can't praise capitalism for Europe's successes and then call it a socialist hellhole.
On your 10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%. It doesn't mean all $10 million are taxed.
According to taxfoundation.org, proponents of this view often point to the 1950s when the top federal income tax rate was 91% for most of the decades. However, despite these high marginal rates, the top 1% of taxpayers in the 1950s only paid about 42% of their income in taxes. As a result, the tax burden on high-income households today is only slightly lower than what these households faced in the 1950s. Now, there are multiple reasons why that was, ranging from very few Americans actually falling into the top bracket. For the Americans who did fall into the bracket, the majority of their income was not subject to the top bracket tax. And most importantly, there are many studies that show that as marginal tax rates rise, income reported by taxpayers goes down. As a result, the existence of the 91% bracket did not necessarily lead to significantly higher revenue collections from the top 1%. This is key to why so many on the left, along with Cortez, is wrong with this proposal. If history repeats itself at all, raising the marginal tax on high-income earners won't result in that much of a difference. Plus, it only encourages said high earners to report less of their income. This is actually why I believe a flat tax rate is the best option. If everyone was paying 15 to 25% of their income in taxes, obviously the guy making $20 million a year will be contributing far more in taxes. Plus, we lessen the risk of income not being reported, essentially making the same, if not more, in tax revenue.
You'd think from that the conservatives found their ultimate rebuttal, a study from a somewhat respected source, the Tax Foundation. However, in a rebuttal to it by the Roosevelt Institute, some basic errors are made in calculating the taxes paid by the rich. The total national and income percentage shared by the top 1% and 0.1% were much lower in the 1950s compared to today. Being rich in 1959 isn't the same as it would be today. Plus, we can't forget about inflation. There aren't any households earning $100 million, for example, in the 1950s, so they weren't factored into the analysis. Furthermore, even if the rich were only paying a little more than they are now, wouldn't that defeat the argument that a flat tax rate and trickle-down economics are necessary for growth? Look at what trickle-down economics brought us in the 20s and early 30s. Contrary to popular belief, the stock market crash wasn't some fluky event that began an overnight downward spiral into the Depression. Continued bad decisions by the government, bank failings while the fat cats up top were fine, the government not insuring people's deposits, and so on. It was a continued downward spiral through 1930 and 1931, when it wasn't until 1932, when the shit hit the fan, that people realized it wasn't going to get better, and Hoover's trickle-down economics weren't going to save us at all. The symptoms actually began during the Harding and Coolidge administrations. The farmers were doing poorly and foretold the grim future that the rest of America would face. In the 30s, the Dust Bowl would make an already bad situation worse.
Cortez has a ton of other dumbass proposals as well, all of which kinda shoot her in the foot. Cortez wants Medicare for all, fully funded universities, a universal jobs guarantee, housing is a human right, and based on her interview with Colbert, government-provided food as well. If you have government Medicare, universities, jobs, housing, and food, there is absolutely no incentive to work. Why go to work if I don't have medical bills, rent, or groceries to purchase? There would literally be no reason to work.
Why would people work? Let's see. Because they enjoy doing what they're doing, and because work pays a hell of a lot better than government benefits. And even if we take that part of the equation out, contrary to conservatives and their Hobbesian misanthropic beliefs, you don't need to poke people in the ass with a stick to get them to work. Most people don't like sitting around all day doing nothing indefinitely. As much as we enjoy time off, we get sick of it quickly. Why do you think so many people who can't find work, even in countries with universal healthcare, are looking for jobs desperately and get frustrated over absurd requirements for an entry-level job like 5 years work experience? People want to work, Hunter. Why do you think so many kids dream about being an astronaut, a doctor, a teacher, a scientist, a firefighter, and so on? What kid says, when I grow up, I want to sit on my butt all day, making just enough money to get by, while growing bored out of my mind?
The women and children on that border that are trying to seek refuge and seek opportunity in the United States of America with nothing but the shirt on their backs are acting more American than any person who seeks to keep them out ever will be.
It was actually mostly men seeking jobs, not asylum. According to migrationpolicy.org, the highest percentage of illegals currently in our country, 26%, are aged 25 through 34, and the second largest percentage, 25%, are aged 35 to 44.
So let's make it easier to become a citizen. Contrary to popular belief, you don't apply for citizenship and wait 3 to 5 business days, take a test, and then bam, you're a citizen like on TV. One man spent 27 years waiting before citizenship was approved. To put that into perspective, someone born a year after he applied could have run for Congress last year, being 25 to 26 years old. So tell me how this is a fair and just system.
It's flat out disgusting to suggest that illegal criminal foreigners attempting to disregard our laws and enter our country illegally are somehow more American than American citizens who want to respect our laws and properly vet those who wish to enter.
Gee, I don't know. Ask the Native Americans who were the victims of a genocide what it's like for a foreign presence to come and colonize by force, wiping out through genocide and sick methods like smallpox blankets. The genocide that was the inspiration for Hitler's final solution. That sounds more like what you're describing than anything going on in 2019. Also, notice how Hunter disingenuously is conflating undocumented immigrants with criminals as if they're all part of some scary drug cartel, and that's the only reason they're coming here.
Since when is breaking into our country and demanding handouts more American than living here your whole life, paying taxes, and working to be where you are today.
So, are the scary brown people here to take our jobs, or are they here for government benefits? Pick one, dipshit.
Imagine disregarding someone's disastrous policies and instead praising someone because she checks off your identity politics checklist.
Isn't disregarding someone's disastrous policies the exact same reason why conservatives voted for Trump in 2016? It was mostly white Christian conservative men who voted for the game show host, who had several casinos go bankrupt to the point where his daddy had to bail him out of trouble. Self-made man, my ass. In conclusion, this might rank up there with the truth about transgenders as one of the worst videos Hunter ever released on his channel. Easily the worst part of the video is when Hunter advocated against Medicare for all. To see this smug Fox News Republican advocate against people having access to healthcare so that they won't die is just infuriating. Until next time, I'm Danny Kortz, and I need to brace myself for the inevitable hate comments Hunter's fans are gonna send my way.